Welcome to The Authentic Path, where we explore the intersection of leadership, performance science, and ancient wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Vanessa Calderon. I'm a Harvard-trained physician and healer with over 20 years of leadership and business development experience. I blend science and ancestral wisdom with proven strategies to help you get the results you desire in work and in life without losing yourself along the way. Let's get started. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so thrilled that you're here. I want to start by just asking all of you for a huge favor. If you have been listening and you have been enjoying this podcast, please give us a quick rating and a review. It really helps other people find us. That's how the algorithm works. And so if you are listening to this on a platform where you can do a rating and a review, please do that. Thank you for taking the time to do that. And I would love to hear if there are any topics specifically that you want me to cover. I love doing these episodes. I spend a lot of time diving deep into the research and making sure I'm bringing you something that you can actually use. So if you are listening and there's a problem you've been struggling with, something you really want solved, send me a DM. I'm at Vanessa Calderon MD. I hang out on Instagram. So send me a quick DM. Let me know what you want me to cover. And I would love to cover that for you. And if you just want to say hi, send me a DM. I also love to know what's been helping you. So if any of these episodes have been really resonating with you, feel free to share. Let me know. And of course, share this podcast with your friends, family, cousins, uncles, aunts, anyone who you think would benefit, because the more people we have walking the planet that are conscious, that are awake, that are living intentional, purposeful lives, the better planet we will have. All right, sweet friends, let us jump in. I'm talking today about a concept that I think is so important to come back to over and over again, especially when life feels really hard, like when we're really struggling and a lot of pain. I think this is a really important topic to get into. So I'm going to talk about the concept today, which is the importance of duality in life. And then I'm going to talk about what I mean by that, how this shows up for us specifically, for those of you listening to this podcast episode, and what we can start doing to really allow ourselves to live in the both and in the duality of life. So I'm going to start today by sharing a quick story with you. So if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know I lost my mom 2 years ago, and it sucked. It was really hard. My mom was this incredible human being that was just a huge light in this world. And man, she was larger than life. She was incredible. She was really a legend. And her last 3 days on Earth while she was still here, she was on hospice, and we had family and friends coming from all over the United States and Mexico, coming to say their last goodbyes and talk to her. And it was hard. I was there with her those 3 days by her bedside. I wouldn't leave her side. One of my love languages is quality time. So I was there with her, like by her bedside the entire time. People would come in and out, and I wouldn't leave, because if she needed anything, I wanted to make sure she had it. She needed more pain medicine, if she needed to be changed, if she needed water. I didn't want her to need anything. It was really hard. I had a lot of grief, and I also experienced this incredible amount of, I don't know, it was like joy, maybe. I was listening to people because I was sitting by her bedside the entire time. There were people from all walks of life coming to sit next to my mom to say thank you for the relationship she had with them. There was a woman who came in who said, "I don't know if you remember me, Olivia. When I came to this country," she came from Guatemala, and I don't know how she met my mom, but she was like, I was pregnant and I didn't have any family here, and I went into labor, and you stayed with me at the hospital the entire time and held my hand so I wouldn't have to be alone." Oh, my mom, that's the kind of stuff she did. And then there was one of her best friends from high school that came in and sat by her side and started thanking her for always making sure she had enough money to eat. Her friend said, when we were in high school, you always had extra change or a few extra dollars, and I never had enough. And you always made sure to give me your extra money if I ever needed anything, so that I would never go hungry. Getting to hear all those stories. And I mean, the list goes on and on. I started taking notes when I heard them sharing, because I wanted to remember these stories forever. So I was experiencing this tremendous amount of grief. I'm watching, I knew I'm a physician. I know that my mom's on hospice, and I know that she's going to die soon. I can see all the signs. And at the same time, I get to hear these beautiful stories. And I was experiencing a tremendous amount of grief and joy at the same time. And I realized, holy smokes, this is it. This is the human experience. The human experience that you can't have your entire human experience if you're not open to feel everything. I had to feel that level of grief because without it, I wouldn't have been able to feel the amount of love. Like I had so much deep love and admiration for my mother that, of course, on the other side of that love and admiration comes grief when they're not around. It's like the concept of you can't have light without the shadow. You can't know what hot is if you don't know what cold is. And that is the spectrum of the human experience. So I want you to imagine the human experience as this circle. And half of the circle is sort of the higher vibrational, good feeling things that we feel, joy and love and happiness. And the other half are the things we don't want to feel. It's the grief and the sadness and the disappointment and the loss. But when you think about the human experience, it's not just about making one side bigger and the other side smaller, because that's a lopsided experience and that wouldn't really give you the full experience. That would be really inauthentic. The actual human experience is making that entire pie bigger. The more you're able to hold space for the stuff that doesn't feel good, the more your life is able to feel the good stuff, and the more profound and joyful and fulfilling your life will be. And that is the duality of life. That's the duality. The reason why we're talking about it today is because what I have seen happen is so many of us are walking this planet trying to avoid the hard stuff. We're creating programs and trying to sell people the fastest, easiest, all of these things. And really, what I never want anyone to ever do is rob people of their life experience, of their human experience, of going through the dark to come out to the light. That's the win. That's the transformation. That's the breakthrough. That's what we need to hold space for. So what we're going to talk about today is what duality actually means, how it's sort of stood the test of time, and then how we can start practicing it now. Okay, so let's jump in. So the concept of duality can sound a little philosophical. It can even sound a little abstract, but I am going to bring it down to earth because I want all of you to know how this feels when it lives in your body, not conceptually, but your lived experience. In coaching conversations, when you're holding space for your clients' breakthroughs, well, you yourself are going through something incredibly hard. That's duality. In a moment where you feel like a really big break happening for you, like maybe you experienced your first 6 figures and you expected this huge triumph, and instead you felt this like weird, strange feeling of like loss, like, wait a second, that didn't make me feel better. That's duality. Or when you watch your children you watch your son do something incredible, maybe some athletic feat or something, and it was so amazing. And then you come home and he's like yelling and screaming because he's a teenager. That's duality. That gap between, the stuff that feels so good and the stuff that feels so hard, between who you're becoming and who you have been, is duality. So at its core, duality is the principle that opposing forces, light and dark, expansion and contraction, joy and grief, confidence and doubt, that they are not enemies, that they are, in fact, part of the same thing. They're partners, and that each one of them defines the other. They're sort of two sides of the same coin, or if you think about a tension rod, they're the balancing forces on each side. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot know what it feels like to be deeply loved and seen if you've never known what it feels like to be invisible or to feel so lonely that it feels cold. You cannot lead others through transformation if you haven't genuinely transformed yourself. You cannot know deep healing if you haven't felt the wound of pain, of suffering, of trauma. So these ideas aren't new. This is not new aged. In fact, it's some of the oldest ideas humans have held on to over and over again that we've passed on from tradition to tradition to tradition. In the Hermetic tradition, a body of philosophical and spiritual teachings that traces its roots way back to ancient Egypt, there's this ancient text. It's called the Kybalion. In fact, you can read it if you want. It's spelled Kybalion. The teachings of the Kybalion were published in like the 1900s, but the teachings themselves are much, 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 much older than that. They're an ancient text. And there's 7 core principles in the Kabbalion. One of the principles is called the principle of polarity. And here's what it says. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but just different in degree. Identical in nature, but different in degree. It's like what Albert Einstein says. He says everything is relative. When you really think about that, that's one of his, most basic sayings, but it's one of the most profound. Everything is relative. Relative to what? That's the question. Relative to what? So if you're outside and you're like, man, it's hot out here. Hot compared to what? It has to be relative. Man, I've never loved someone this much. Like, this is the most I've ever loved. How do you know that? Because you know what it feels like to not love somebody. Everything is relative. So let that sit in there. Let that sit in. The concept that opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Hot and cold could be opposites, but really they're just the same thing, just difference in temperatures, different in degrees. Confidence and self-doubt, same thing. Different points on the same pole. The version of you that's certain of your calling and the version of you that lies awake at 2 a.m. wondering, like, what in the world am I doing with my life? Same person, just different positions. That framing can change so much about how we relate to hard things. I'm going to share with you a few other ancient texts that I think might support you in just like really letting this land in your body. So the Tao, the Tao Te Ching, attributed to the philosopher Lao Tzu, was written around the 6th century BCE, and it gives us the concept of yin and yang. Yin and yang, you guys have seen the black and white circles together, and in Western culture, we have sort of flattened this into a logo, but the Taoist understanding is so much richer than that. So if you think about the yin and yang, what you see is two things that are complementary to each other. They're not competing, they're complementary to each other. And each of them contains a seed of the other. If you look at the yin and yang, you'll see it in the black, you'll see a tiny little hole that's white. And on the white, you'll see a tiny little circle that's black. Each contains a seed of the other. The growing season holds the seed of winter. The high enrollment month, for example, of your practice holds the seed of the slow month. They each give rise to each other. They complete each other. And the Tao is really clear. Resistance to this natural cycle, or trying to hold only the good. Again, like you see that the circle, that analogy I gave you, and the right side being all the positive stuff, trying to only hold the good or only like grow the good and trying to avoid the hard is really the root of suffering. The sage doesn't fight the current. They move with it, which is incidentally exactly what what I tell all my coaching clients to do. Don't resist what's hard. Learn from it. Try to figure out what is it here to teach you. And this is the thing that we most struggle to do ourselves. So if you were to fast forward to, let's say, Western psychology and psychiatry, we talk about the shadow side, the shadow aspect. And Carl Jung spent his life studying what's called the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we push away, that we deny, that we refuse to look at. In internal family systems, we call this parts work. And for us as leaders and as coaches, having a level of self-mastery really supports us in being better leaders and being better coaches and being better entrepreneurs. And the shadow often has a very specific texture. It's the fear that we're not actually looking at, the fear that we're not actually qualified to do the work that we're doing, that we're imposters, for example. It could be, the envy of someone else that's doing similar work and they look like they're working faster. Why do they have it so easy? So the insight of the shadow work is that the shadow doesn't disappear when you ignore it. Just because you're not looking at those fear parts that live inside of you or those shadow parts inside of you, they don't go away. They actually get stronger and they start to leak out in ways that are very unintentional. When we ignore shadow sides, let's say you're an entrepreneur, let's say you're a coach, and you are ignoring, there's a client who you feel resentment towards because they keep canceling on you, or they're showing up late, or they're just not doing the work that they're supposed to be doing. They're not doing their part. And you keep ignoring it, and you keep going on. But then it'll leak in the ways that maybe you overreact when the client does show up. Or maybe you're a leader that's always saying, yes, 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 I'll do more. And you're starting to feel resentful. And now there's a boundary that was broken. Maybe it was because you tried to set this boundary, but you didn't respect your own boundary, but you keep trying to set it. And people keep pushing all over your boundaries. And you start feeling really angry. That might be your shadow side leaking out. So what's really important here is to notice that those shadow sides exist and they're not going to go away just because we ignore them. We get to know them. We get to be with them. We get to be present to the shadow sides that live inside of us. That is how we bring in the light. Oh my gosh. In fact, Rumi, one of my favorite poets of all time, the Persian poet Rumi, he has this one line that I think is just so beautiful, which is the wound, the dark place, is the place where the light enters you. The wound is the place where the light enters you. So when we get to know our shadow sides, all of our triggers, the things that really rub us the wrong way, when you get to know those, not ignore them, but really know, don't waste a trigger, get to know what that's trying to teach you. That is how you grow. That is where you blossom. That's a bud waiting to happen. I had a teacher, he was one of my trauma psychology teachers, and he called all of those wounds buds. He said, that is where the rosebuds, those beautiful, beautiful places that, where we get to give back to the world, that's where they come from. So all of these traditions that I just shared with you, all these ancient traditions across thousands of years, across cultures, across disciplines, are all pointing to very similar truths, that the full experience of being human, being an entrepreneur, being a leader, of being a parent, of being a professional, being a coach, they all require you to experience all of life. Not the parts, not the highlights that we want to share on Instagram, but all of life. Okay, so I want to tap in and go a little deeper here, specifically with all of you, with leaders, with entrepreneurs, with coaches. I think this community specifically is navigating something that makes duality really, really important and also harder to practice than almost anyone else. Because if you think about it, our work is transformation. We're in the business of transformation. We're in the business of getting people results to transform, or of leading teams. And when your entire brand is built around helping people break through, rise up, reach their next level, or really when you're leading these teams to what else can we create? What else is possible? There's this professional and also social pressure to appear really well put together, or to appear transformed already, and to appear like that all the time, to have already done all the things that you're teaching, to be living proof that it works. And when you're not feeling that, when you're in a part of life where things feel hard, like when I was grieving my mom, let me tell you, that was not really easy. So when your business is, for example, not doing well, when your teams are failing, when you don't feel like the version of yourself, when you don't feel like you're being really successful, it's really hard for you to show up. And the shame is doubled because you're not just struggling. Now you're struggling in a field that is professionally, you're supposed to be the person that's super successful. And that is a trap. And it's a trap that's really worth naming incredibly directly, because we don't want to create this inauthentic version of who we are. Most of us listening to this podcast, we want to live the wholeness of life, that we know we want that cognitively, but we're trying to only live on the right side, only the positive stuff. We always want to stay in momentum. We always want to be going. We always want to be succeeding. We'll tolerate the hard stuff only long enough to get the lesson from it, to keep going, to figure out I'm only going to do that because I know I'll be successful. And here's what I'll tell you, that's still avoidance. You're wrapping your pain in a story of it's going to get me to where I want to go. It's still avoiding your pain. So here's what I know to be true, that when we decided to come into human form, when our souls decided to come into human form, we did not sign a contract that said, I'm never going to feel the hard stuff. I'm only here to do the good stuff. I'm only here to experience the good stuff. No, none of us signed a contract that said that. When we decided to come into human form, we decided to have a human experience. And guess what? We have a limbic system. We have an amygdala. That means we're going to have feelings, all of them. And we're going to have fear, because we're biologically wired to have both. So the way to really experience all of life, again, it's not to avoid the bad stuff. It's to make space for all of it, to do your best to make space for all of it, not to resist it, but to make space for it. That is how we experience peace, and that's how we experience a larger, more profound life. It's really, really, really beautiful what's possible for us when we make space for all of it. Okay, I want to get a little specific here and talk about some of the duality that I see happen for coaches specifically and leaders and entrepreneurs, because I think it's just really important to name these things. The first is the duality of holding space for someone while you are also in a season where you need space held for you. So we're trained sometimes professionally and culturally to be the container for other people's pain, suffering, transformation. And that's a really beautiful, sacred role as a physician, as an entrepreneur, as a coach, as a leader, to be, the mentor for someone. But containers also have to be maintained, my friends. If you are perpetually giving, and you are not making space to also be held, to be loved, you are going to start giving from a place of depletion. And if you've been listening long enough, you know that that is not sustainable. You are no longer modeling transformation. You are now modeling excessive self-sacrifice. And martyrdom does not serve anybody. Martyrdom does not serve anyone. It will not serve you. You will be resentful at the end, and you are not giving of your best self. And this is where we start seeing physicians' risk go up. Like, this is when you start getting sued, because now you're getting tired and burnt out. You're going to make mistakes, and you're probably not your best at home with your kids. You're probably more short and exhausted. This is where compassion fatigue starts to set in. And your clients, consciously or subconsciously, are also going to start picking up on that. You are not your best self when you are not holding space for yourself, when you need that space held. Make space for you to also be held when you need it. Create a community to make sure that you're getting space held for. Make sure you have a coach or some friends or someone you can go and talk to, a mastermind you're a part of. All right, the second is the duality of visibility and vulnerability. I think this is really important, because to grow a business nowadays, you got to show up. You have to show up on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on whatever, all these places. And you have to have an online presence. You have to show up. You have to be consistent, and you have to be a leader. You have to be public. And at the same time, it's really scary to do that. You're a human, and it's really scary sometimes to show up. You don't want to get judged. You don't want to be in front of a camera. Maybe you don't think you look good or sound good. You don't know what to say. What if your second grade teacher sees you and thinks you're crazy? These are all the things I've heard from my clients. Or like, what if an old cousin shows up, or an uncle, or someone starts to judge you? All of a sudden, the pressure to perform you start like doubting and questioning, like, holy smoke, should I be this public? And that's one of the most exhausting weights in the online entrepreneurial space, the concept of visibility and vulnerability. Like, that is a duality. We get to be present online if we want to grow our businesses, and we also want to be the most authentic version of ourselves. And that can feel really vulnerable. And that's the only way to do it. And being able to recognize that those two things exist, and that you're not the only one struggling with it, that it's a human experience, when you make space for that, it makes it a little bit easier. Okay, the third duality is the duality of mission and money. Most of us who came to this work, at least the people that are probably listening to this podcast and everybody that I work with, we're here because we're mission-driven people that want to make the world a better place, and we are service-driven people. We're here because we want to help people feel better, do better, be better versions of themselves. And you cannot do that. Like, you need revenue to sustain that work. If you're going to have an impact, you need a team. If you're going to have an impact, you need time. If you're going to have an impact, you need resources. And when those two things rub up against each other, the concept of mission and money, when you're deciding on your pricing, for example, or launching when something doesn't feel like aligned, or maybe you have a client that says they can't afford that, the tension gets real. And pretending that it isn't a tension, pretending it isn't, doesn't make you more mission driven. Pretending that you don't need the money, it doesn't make you more mission driven. It just means you're carrying the tension alone. It just means that you're going to now be on a road to burnout. That is something that is really, really important. It's actually the entire reason I created the program called Resourced Wealth, which, by the way, is amazing if you're interested. If you're someone that wants to make a really big difference in this world, and you want to be able to have the capacity to do that without burning out, and you want to have a larger impact, I really recommend you check it out. It's called Resourced Wealth. I'm going to run it again in the fall. I just finished the cohorts, and I was hearing the stories of the women that went through the program the first time, and I was in tears, because I created the program for mission-driven women that wanted to increase their capacity to hold wealth, to do more good in the world. And what I was hearing from these women is like, wow, now I realize that I can use my money to do more good in the world. And now they feel free to receive more wealth, to create more money, to make these choices that are really in service to them and the people that they are serving. It is so powerful. So the duality again is mission and money. And here's the thing about dualities. Dualities don't necessarily need to be resolved immediately. It's just something we get to be aware of. It gives us a framework for holding them without collapsing, without thinking something's gone wrong. Because I think that's what usually happens with these dualities is we notice both of these and it's hard for us to hold both of those things as truths because the mind loves black and white thinking. And so when we're holding two things that can be true at the same time, we have to make space for it. We have to say, okay, I can hold two truths at the same time. The certain and the uncertain, both things can be true. What does this mean for you and for the people you lead? Here's what I want every mission-driven entrepreneur and leader to understand about the ripple effect of the work that we're doing when we make space for our own duality. When you, as a coach, as a leader, when you've done this work of integrating your own duality, when you've sat with your own grief, with your own doubt, with your own shadow work, something in your presence changes. Your clients feel it before you'll even say anything. There's a quality of steadiness that only comes from having walked the dark, having been in the dark and found your way back to the light. It can't be taught in a certification program. It can't be performed. It can't be earned. It's something you have to experience. It's part of life. It's part of your human experience. I was just thinking about this at the gym the other day. So I'm in my mid-40s and my hormones have all started changing and I'm pretty close to menopause. I've always been an athlete. I've always exercised and worked out, and I've been someone that I've always been really strong, really fit. Besides the times that I gave birth to kids, I've had 4-packs in my abs. So like I've always been really fit and strong. And what I was reflecting on is, wow, like it's harder to keep that body frame when you go through menopause because your hormones are changing, you have more cortisol, all these things start to happen to your body. Your fat stores start to change, now they go around your abdomen. And I was just reflecting on how we have these like young, quote unquote, wellness influencers. They're like 20 years old and they're telling you all these things you need to do. And I'm like, I am not interested in learning from a 20-year-old influencer because it's actually not that hard in it is hard in your 20s, but it's not that hard in your 20s compared to your 50s to create the health and the body that you want to create. And so for me, I want someone that's gone through it, that's had the experience and come out the other side. I want to learn from those people. That's who I want to learn from. I think about that with every coach I've ever worked with. I want to know that you have gone in through the depths of what you're trying to teach me, that you've been there and that you've come out the other side, and you can share with me both from your academic experience, but from your lived experience. Because if you've never lived it, where are you sharing from? Are you just like repeating what somebody else said? And I don't think that's true for all areas of life, but I do think for me, it's really important for transformational teachers or coaches. And I actually think that the people that are going to, for us, have a really big impact, which is why mentors matter and our elders matters, because they have a life experience that offers them so much more wisdom that we could ever get from reading in a book. And your clients are going to feel that. Your clients are going to feel that. I had one of my clients recently tell me, she was leaving me a testimonial and she said, the one thing immediately that I knew as soon as I met you, I met her at a conference, she said was, it was your presence. I was like, what do you mean by that? She's like, you were so calm and confident and you spoke so clearly. And I was just, presence is something that you can't really articulate. It's a sense, it's a feeling that you get. And that's life experience. Like had she met me 15 years ago, I probably wouldn't have that same presence, but I've been through some stuff and I've come out the other side. And so this is how I show up now because this is the life experience that I've had. And I have not shied away from the pain, and I have not shied away from the dark side. I have gone to the depths of the dark because I have been so committed to my own healing, my own transformation, to me feeling joy, because I know that the more joy I feel, the more healed I am, the more clear I am from the life experiences, all the traumas, all of that, the more I will be able to give back to my people. And for me, I'm here to live a life of service, and that's what matters to me. So the more I can love myself, get to know all of me and love all of me and accept all of me, the more I'll be able to be present for my people, to give to my people. And that's what matters to me. And that's why it's so important for you, because the people you lead, your patients, your clients, they're going to feel that. When they sense that you are genuinely unafraid of the full range of the human experience, they're going to feel that themselves, and it's going to give them permission to stop performing as well. They will no longer think they need to show up to you perfect. Nothing is ever wrong with them. No, they're going to see like, yeah, I had a shitty day today and I need to talk about it. And that is what we want. We want people to bring their real stuff. We want them to be vulnerable and authentic. We want them to feel safe. We don't want them to show up thinking that they always need to feel fixed. Nope. We want the raw version, because that's where actual transformation happens. I remember one of my clients a long time ago said that one of the most impactful things for us in our sessions was that in the very first session she had with me, she came and I asked a question. It was a group coaching program, and I asked a question to the group, and then she answered thinking she had all the right answers. Like she had watched the modules and done all the stuff. And then I had a follow-up about like, okay, so tell me about how you implemented that or how you integrated that. And she didn't have an answer for that. And she was like, okay, that's when I learned that if I was going to actually be in this program and be successful, I had to do the work. It wasn't about showing up perfect with the right answer. It was about doing the work. And this, my friends, is why this concept of duality matters. Duality is not this personal growth luxury. For those of us in this work, it's sort of a professional responsibility, because the depth of impact you can have is directly proportional to the depth you've been willing to go for yourself. I gave a talk at a conference, and I said this thing that I didn't think was that big of a deal, but it got quoted back to me a million times, so I'll share it with you, which is this: that when you choose to go deep, when you choose to grow personally, that is part of your service to the world. Your growth, your depth, that's part of your service to the world. It's not separate. It's not separate from your service. You growing, you feeling better, that's not separate from your service. That is your service to the world. That's just it. I cannot have my full life experience or my full capacity to serve if I haven't honored all of my experiences. And of course, we're all woven together. So my willingness to feel hard things creates permission for other people to feel hard things too. And that also makes space for me to feel an incredible amount of compassion. I could not experience the level of amount of compassion I feel for closed head traumas until I fell and had a concussion myself. I'm already like incredibly compassionate and empathic. And as a physician, I feel like I'm incredibly compassionate and empathic. And my patient experience scores always say that over and over again. And to think that after I had a concussion, like how much more compassionate I was able to be to my patients that came in with concussions, or after I became a parent, what a better doctor I became to parents of young kids. Like, it makes a big difference to have life experience. So if all of this is true, and if every tradition that we've ever encountered agrees that it's true, why is it that we keep trying to only live on the positive, on the one side? Especially for those of us who know better, for those of us who've read all the books and done all the courses, for those of us who teach this work. Well, there's two reasons. And I'm going to name them both here because I think it's important to give space to them. One of them is this: there's a relationship with hard that society wants to avoid. And the coaching industry is making it worse, I have to tell you. The online coaching world has a super complicated relationship with hard. So does the entire world. Like, think about the books, 4-hour work week, or do this faster. Like, those types of things sell. They make a lot of money because people want the easy way out. What's the way that I can do it the easiest, the fastest? And here's the thing. There is no magic bullet. There is no I used to joke about this, but I would tell people that wanted to work with me, like, hey, I don't have any magic beans over here. Like, I'm not just going to give you some Jack and the Beanstalk beans and you're going to be able to like magically transform. No, like, you get to do the work. If you want to do the work, you get to do the work. There's no easy way. And the more you're willing to accept that, the deeper your transformation gets. The more you're willing to not avoid the hard, the uncomplicated, the more you're going to really grow in the world, in life. And think about it. Okay, because one of the things my coach says is success is the worst teacher. And I totally agree, because think about all of the times that you have failed and you've chosen to get back up again. Every time you have a fail, every time you miss a shot, I think about basketball a lot because I used to coach my son's team and I played basketball growing up. Every time you miss a shot, if you choose to get better, if you choose to stay in the game and you want to do well, you're going to learn how to stay, practice your form, get better at free throws, get better at 3-point shots. You're going to learn what it takes. And that's the same thing for entrepreneurship and for coaching and for leadership. Every time you fail, when you learn from your mistake and you choose to learn, you're going to get better and better and better. It's those failures that teach you the best lessons. And I know that that's like what people talk about all the time, but nobody actually wants to experience the failure. We're still avoiding the failure. What we want to do is just make it easier, safer. What's the way that I can do it and not feel disappointed, not feel any of the hard stuff? Sorry, there's no way. Like the sooner you can get good with feeling the hard stuff, the disappointment, the failure, the sooner you will be successful. Because that's it. Success is built on failures over and over and over again. And so I want you to just stick with that. Like, yes, I know society has this really wild relationship with the concept of hard, but life is going to be hard. Be open to the fact that things are going to feel uncomfortable and hard and difficult. And the more that you can make space for that learning, the better your life will be because you're no longer going to be resistant to it. And number 2, of course, is resistance, because this one is probably more personal. And this one lives in our nervous system. This is when a difficult emotion arises. A big one is disappointment. I would have to say in the online entrepreneurial space, it's disappointment or maybe even grief about your business that isn't growing fast enough, or disappointment that your launch didn't go well, or that you're not getting that client, or, this person that said they were going to sign with you hasn't followed up with you. Whatever it is, it causes uncomfortable feelings, disappointment, sadness. You feel like a failure, all those things. And so what do? We try to avoid those feelings by pushing harder, working harder, pretending that those feelings aren't there. I don't know what you do to buffer your emotions. Maybe you go on Netflix and watch a bunch of Netflix, or go eat a snack that's not healthy, or you have a glass of wine. Either way, you try to avoid the emotion. And in the short term, you avoid the emotion. But in the long term, those emotions don't go anywhere. They don't go anywhere. And if you choose to stay in the game, whether it's the game of entrepreneurship, the game of leadership, the game of taking care of patients in the hospital, whatever game you choose to play in life, if you want to be good at it, if you want to continue to grow and be the best version of yourself, you're going to have to stay in the game, and you're going to have to stop avoiding your feelings. I have a podcast episode. One of my earlier podcast episodes is called How to Feel Uncomfortable Feelings. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. One thing that's, I think, really important to know about feelings is we know, because we've measured them, that they're energetic potentials, that they're action potentials. So essentially electricity that's moving from our limbic system down through the body to whatever part of the body that we're feeling it in, and then it'll keep moving. And we know, again, because we've measured it, that it takes on average about 90 seconds to let it move through the body. Okay. So there's, in fact, a neuroscientist, Jill Bolt Taylor, who did a lot of research around this. What she found was that when the action potential starts, the electricity that starts moving through the body with an emotion, if we breathe into it, if we just say like, oof, I feel don't even label it, I feel pressure in my chest, and keep breathing through it, about 90 seconds later, it gets weaker and weaker, and the energy just keeps moving. Now, what keeps the emotion from moving, what keeps us kind of stuck in the emotion, is when we tie a story to it. When instead of saying I feel pressure, I say I feel disappointment or anger or whatever label we give it, and then we have a story on top of it. Now what's happening is we have the action potential moving through our body. We've labeled a story. Now the story's on top of it. So now we have the story up here of anger or sadness or disappointment. And that story starts another cycle of connecting the neurons, the thought and feeling neurons. And so it cycles again and again. And so now the energy can't keep moving because you're creating more and more of it with your thoughts, with your stories. And so the resistance or the narrative or the story or the judgment creates it creates the energy, the emotion of the energy to feel stuck in your body. So what we want to do when you're feeling something uncomfortable, make space for it. Go listen to that episode I have on the ABCDs of emotions, how to feel hard emotions. It's a super simple process that really allows the emotions to move through your body without them getting stuck. Friends, that was a lot of stuff that we just talked about. So what is it that we want to do moving forward. Okay, so I'm going to give you two practices. They're small, but they're really important. And here's one: make space for duality. I want you to just be open to knowing that the world is half good, half not so good, 50-50. Okay, so sometimes you're going to feel the good stuff, sometimes you're going to feel the not so good stuff. That's just the human experience. That's it. Let it be the human experience. Know that you cannot have deep love if you don't also experience grief sometimes. You can't have heartbreak if you didn't experience like a profound amount of love. You can't find connection if you aren't also lonely. You can't have one without the other. So make space for 50-50. You can even say to yourself when you're in the negative stuff, like, all right, well, life is 50-50. This is the negative stuff that I'm feeling. It's okay. There's stuff on the other side, and nothing is permanent. It's not going to stay like that. It's going to keep moving. And the second thing I'll share is make space for the discomfort. When the discomfort arises, let it move through your body. Just make space for it. Let it move through. Don't resist it. Don't push it away. Don't add a narrative to it like judgment, because that'll just make it last longer. So just make space for it. So one last reflection before we close up. This is more of a question for all of you. I, again, want you to think about a time in your life when things felt really hard. Maybe it was a business venture that didn't work. Maybe it was a program that you launched that didn't work. Maybe it was a relationship that had to end. Whatever it is, think about that for a second. And now, if you fast forward to the future and look back, I want you to ask yourself, like, what did that make possible for me? What lesson did I learn from that? How did that make me stronger, better, a better teacher? And not in a toxic positivity way, not in a way that's gaslighting the fact that it was hard at the time. Nope, not that way at all, but in an honest way, because most of us can trace the depth of our current work directly back to something that was really hard or difficult for us. The hard things weren't detours. They were just the way. And that's duality at work. It's just the circle completing itself. All right, sweet friends, I'll leave you with this. Duality is not a problem to solve. It's not a mindset block to clear. It's what we signed up for when we decided to come back into the human experience. When our souls came back into this body, it's part of what we signed up for. That's just it. And for all of us that are deciding to be leaders, to be entrepreneurs, we're going to have to make space for all of life, the good and the bad. It's just part of it. And the sooner that we can see and agree that life is really just 50-50, there's always one side of the other coin. There's always shadow and dark, light and shadow, the easier our life will be. All right, sweet friends, I will see you next week. Adios. Hey friends, if this episode resonated, please take a quick second and leave a review, share it with a friend, or post it to your community. It's how we keep helping others who are walking a similar path, and how together we grow the movement of consciousness in business, leadership, and life. Thank you again for being here, and I'll see you next week.